From the return of the Outbreak event, an update to Nokk, which finally brings back Silent Step, and a squad-based update to recruits, which allow you to play 5 recruits at once, just like old times. Welcome back to the Siege Mailbox, the series where you, the viewer, comment your Siege-related questions and topic discussions, and there's a chance I'll cover them in the next video. You can post these in the comments of this video, or by joining my Discord in the description, and post your questions to the Siege Mailbox channel. This episode of the Siege Mailbox was filmed live on my Twitch, twitch.tv/kudos. Make sure you jump over and drop a follow. We're going to be making a bunch more content over there live, as well as obviously playing Siege. Okay, this first one is by Grease over on the Discord, and he asks, what if Extraction was a different mode in Siege X, like Dual Front or the events? So yeah, it does seem like Ubisoft are never going to downplay what happened with Extraction and everything that happened with Outbreak, which I honestly don't think they should. We made a video the other day where we looked through a bunch of Siege's concept art, and there was so much effort that went into making Outbreak, and then of course on top of that, Extraction afterwards would be spun off into its own game. And I've made my stance clear on it for years now. I think the game died before it even came out. I think Ubisoft had no faith in the game going out, and as much as I did enjoy Rainbow Six Extraction, the game itself was a shell of what Outbreak was. The art style changed dramatically and it just wasn't as gritty. Half the maps in Extraction, or pretty much all the maps in Extraction, were set out in daytime, whereas like the whole thing about Outbreak is it was dark. We were seeing rainbow wops fighting a threat from outside this world. There was like set pieces. There's a bit where a smasher would run out and it would push a police car over, and that would be like a big moment. Like, oh my god, you now have to face a smasher. Extraction had none of that. It had no set pieces. It didn't even have an animation when you would extract. When you extracted an Outbreak, you would have a full unique animation playing. There was none of that in Extraction. There were moments in Outbreak where you have to like protect an area and there was like a horde of enemies coming at you, and it felt like sort of COD Zombie style. It felt like you were being pinned down and you had to fight this threat. Whereas Extraction kind of just felt like you were playing T-Hunt with sometimes advanced enemies. It was a complete shell of what Outbreak was. Now, do I think Ubisoft probably want to just bury Extraction and act like it didn't happen? I mean, probably. They did bring back the Containment event, which was an Extraction-themed event for Siege set on Consulate, and that came back as recent of like last year, and it even made new React skins and stuff like that. So with the introduction of Dual Front now being a permanent second mode for Rainbow Six Siege, and it having its own tab on the menu, yeah, I think if Ubisoft wanted to, they could just revisit the OG version of Outbreak and start building on it from there. Just act like Extraction never happened. If you bought Extraction, give people a bunch of free skins or something like that. Just bring back Outbreak, bring back the OG mode, modernize it, and then expand on it, and that can be the PvE experience which Siege has. Then on the main menu, you're going to have 3 sections. Core Siege, which is, you know, in its name, Core Siege. It's the 5v5 mode, which we all love. You have Dual Front, which is the 6v6 mode. It's also another PvP mode, but it allows for a different style of gameplay. And then the third menu would be Outbreak, where you and your friends can team up together to face a PvE threat with progression, with, you know, battle pass progression, and especially with the modernization which is happening to the game with Siege X, making the game look more realistic, going back to that gritty sort of lighting and everything. Outbreak would fit perfectly in that. I think we can just act like Extraction never happened, bring back Outbreak, start to expand on it, and make that our third permanent mode for Rainbow Six Siege. You also then have to remember, at the end of the day, Siege is now a free-to-play game. If you can sort of tick as many boxes for that free-to-play game as well, you're opening the game up to a wider audience. You're ticking the PvP box with Core Siege and Dual Front, and then you can tick that PvE box with Outbreak. So yeah, I don't think just because Extraction had a clear rocky development and there was a lot of poor decisions made there, I don't think that should undermine the amount of effort and work that went into the original version of Outbreak, and we should just leave it in the past because of that. I think we just bring Outbreak back, retcon Extraction, and continue Outbreak within Siege itself. It would do numbers for the community, and I think a lot of us would truly love that. This next one is by Righteous Hunter 24, and they ask, what is your opinion on Nokk having her Silent Step back, but she can toggle, sort of like how Capitao in Grim can, between her normal ability, where she's invisible to cameras, but still makes noise, or her Silent Step, where she is quiet, but can be seen by cameras. Now, I'll be honest, I think this is one of the better ideas for a Nokk rework in Rainbow Six Siege. I don't think we'll ever get to a stage where she's going to be fully invisible to cameras with her current state of her ability and given Silent Step back. I think we just have to accept that Ubisoft are never going to do that. They're just not going to. I don't see a future where that's going to happen. So having a compromise where she's either immune to the cameras or immune to sound, I guess is the best way of saying that. Yeah, that's definitely a great idea in my opinion. Maybe for ease of user input, instead of it being like a toggle like Grim and Capitao, it would more be like a passive when she doesn't have her gadget active, she has Silent Step, but then when you activate the gadget, the Silent Step disables. I know that wouldn't really make much sense, but... Or maybe instead of like Silent Step completely deactivating, when she goes invisible to cameras, she makes like a noise. Like her gadget makes nothing crazy, but something distinct enough that if she's close enough, you can be like, oh, well, that's a Nook with her gadget active. I don't know where she is, but I can hear like a faint noise. Like a noise as faint as a Capcan trap. Most people don't even know that Capcan traps make noise, so that's what I mean, that faint. So that would be like an audio version of like the visual clue of when Vigil has his active. You can see the white lines at the bottom. You could sort of have like a audio version of that. If it means that we can at least get Silent Step back for Nook, I would be for that, because that's still better than the current version. She makes noise regardless. If she can get Silent Step back but then makes a noise while she's invisible to cameras, that would still be better than her current iteration. So yeah, I do think if they ever bring back Silent Step for Nook, which they should do, it will come at a bit of a cost as well. But I definitely think that as a very good suggestion from you, and it's better than some of the other ones I've seen for Nook. So yeah, that was a great one. This next one is by Dinnerplate, and they ask, do you think Ubisoft lied / exaggerated about the changes to cheat blocking? Because the cheating problem has been worse than last season and is almost at New Blood levels. I thought they had more of a plan. So one thing I don't doubt for a second is that when Ubisoft said that there was, you know, a downfall in cheating, I don't think they were lying when they said that. I saw firsthand what it was like in ranked when they were saying that. It was genuinely better. There was less cheaters. One of the major cheat providers did shut down around that time as well because of the efforts Ubisoft were doing with the anti-cheat. So when the anti-cheat team are working and they're doing these fixes and they're doing these updates and they can see that they are making progress and cheating is down, it doesn't necessarily matter from the consumer standpoint anyway. If I started to punch you in the back 10 times every day and then the next week I start to punch you in the back 5 times, then yeah, statistically I'm punching you in the back less, but from your perspective, you're still getting hit repeatedly. That's sort of what it's like with the cheating. They are putting in the work, they are trying to tackle the issue, and they are making progress. But at the end of the day, if you're still queuing ranked and you're facing a cheater, it doesn't really feel like that progress is going anywhere. So that's when a lot of these sort of negative reactions to Ubisoft's sort of appraisal of their anti-cheat methods comes around. To be transparent, I do think it's very unfair that a lot of people are clipping statements from the Siege team where they're talking about this decrease in cheating when there was a genuine decrease in cheating. Statistically, it showed it, and myself and a lot of other people could tell you that it felt like cheating was down in rank. There was a period, roughly last season, where it felt like that, and that's when a lot of these statements come from. But now that cheating is on the rise again, presumably there is a new cheat engine active at the moment, yeah, there is more cheaters. I think ranked is in a very bad state right now because of the cheaters. But I'll be honest, I think it's quite unfair that there are a lot of creators taking these clips from a time when it was genuinely, you know, being improved and there was evidence that it was improved, and they're taking those clips and then talking about them now. Cheating is an industry-wide issue. I have so many COD creators talking to me saying that they can't even make content because the cheating's that bad in COD. And it's perfectly fine to be dissatisfied and upset about the situation, but I also think we have to take a realistic stance on stuff as well. If cheating was down last season, which it was, I think it's a bit unfair to take the context of what the devs were saying at that time and apply it to the current point in time. It's very clear a new engine is on the rise. They have to work to counteract that. It's just that anti-cheat is such a complex issue that when new stuff starts to arrive, I assume new stuff has arrived of this season because I keep seeing a cheat where people are like doing a very hard lock soft aim trace. Didn't really see that much recently, so I do think that is a new cheat engine. But assuming that is what's happening here, they obviously have to figure out how that is working. They can't just click and ban everyone with the snap of a fingers. So yes, I agree cheating is bad. It makes me upset. I think ranked is in a very bad state, but I also think people are also being a bit disingenuous in some places as well. I'm not defending the billion-dollar company. I'm just saying hurling insults at individuals who are on the team isn't going to get you very far. Which, to clarify, isn't something that the original question that Dinnerplate just asked was saying, but I have been seeing that on Twitter. So yeah, do I wish that it was a different situation, 100%, but that's just unfortunately the industry's issue at this current point in time. This next one is by Minerdo, and they ask, with Thatcher possibly getting a rework, I thought of something like an EMP radius around Thatcher that he can activate or have passively. Anything within a certain radius can be jammed. This would be good for rush pushes if Thatcher is assisting, stealth pushes for beepers and metal detectors, and he would still need to stay alive to jam gadgets on walls, or even possibly jam C4, smokes, solace, or echo drones during plants. So this is actually somewhat similar to a concept I had for an operator, but it was more of a mute jammer drone with a EMP effect as well. So basically what you're saying with Thatcher, but instead of being attached to Thatcher himself, it would be like a drone which this operator would use, and it work in a similar manner. Now, of course, this question is under the presumption that the Season 4 remaster is going to be Thatcher. We don't know what that operator is going to be yet, but we are going to roll with it for this one, that it might be Thatcher. So yeah, I honestly don't know what they would do to Thatcher. I think they're probably trying to differentiate him a bit more from the impact EMP grenades. I mean, they were introduced because Thatcher was so important to the game. If you didn't play the game before impact EMPs were introduced, basically if you didn't have a Thatcher on the team, you were kind of screwed. And with there being op bans at that time, people would just ban Thatcher every single round. By all means, he was the most important attacker in the game, so they made the Impact EMP grenade, which was a downsized version of his gadget, to then take the load off of him. But the efforts to take the load away from Thatcher has now made him a bit of a weird spot in the game, because most people don't even want to play him because of the Impact EMP. So with your rework idea, you're sort of changing him from being Thatcher to more of an attacking mobile mute, which isn't a terrible idea. I just can't really think what they would do to Thatcher in any way, shape, or form. I do think that they will probably keep the EMP like relevant to his gadget. Whether it is an EMP grenade or an entirely new form of EMP, I think it's definitely going to remain a part of his kit. I don't think they're going to deviate from that aspect of his character too much. It will be a remaster or a rework, whatever you want to call it. So that is a lot to do to warrant it being a remaster. Like, it's not just going to be a single buff. At least off the top of my head, there's nothing that they can do to Thatcher which warrants an entire remaster, rather just a buff. So I definitely think your concept is good. It keeps the theme of Thatcher to an extent, and it's significant enough for it to be an operator remaster. Because the thing is as well, like, you don't want to overcomplicate his gadget. Like, you can give him more uses, but if you overcomplicate it, then people are still just going to use the Impact EMP instead, because it gets the job done. It's simple, it's a secondary gadget, so a bit of a fine line I feel like Ubisoft has to walk with Thatcher now. So if he truly is the operator getting remastered in Season 4, I'm very interested to see what they do with him. But yeah, I think that's a good concept, but I don't think that's a route they would go. This next one is by Auditor over on the Discord, and they ask, is it a good idea for the recruit to have certain faction base like Old Siege, such as FBI, GSG9, GIGN, with certain weapons base, but instead it's like based on squads instead of factions? So Nighthaven, Wolfguard, redhammer, carries, but it's based on the lore, and if someone chooses the faction, you can't choose it again. So only one Wolfguard recruit, only one redhammer recruit, etc. Now, Ubisoft did say there is an update coming to the recruits in Year 10 Season 3, if I'm not wrong. We don't know what that is. I feel like it may be some loadout changes, but I really like this idea because you found a way to bring back the classic style of 5 recruits, with one being for each squad. Redhammer, ghosteyes, viperstrike, wolfguard, and then nighthaven. So if you want a full stack of recruits, each of them would have to be from that squad, and then they would have their own loadout depending on what squad you choose for that recruit. And for dual front, where you have 6 players on the team, maybe they could introduce a Carries Legion recruit as well and give that as an extra option. I don't know, just playing around with the idea there. Now, I really like this idea. Would it be able to limit the gadget selection? Like, the whole thing with the recruits is that they can choose 2 secondary gadgets, and you can do that freely. Maybe if you introduce this new squad system to them, yes, they can still bring 2 secondary gadgets, but it's dependent on what squad you play. So if you choose a viperstrike attacking recruit, you have a ballistic shield with claymores and smoke grenades. If you choose a redhammer one, you have the M4 with frag grenades and flashbangs. You can sort of understand the gist of what I'm going for here. The entire loadout would be attributed to the squad in which this recruit is tied to. Yes, this would sort of be undoing some of the work that was done with the recruit rework and giving them like all the options for like the secondary gadgets, but I think that'd be fun from a narrative perspective, and it would also be a great way of bringing back the 5 stacking recruits in ranked. And I think having a carry legion one would be really fun as well. So yeah, I think this is a really great idea. I don't know what they're doing to the recruits next season. It's probably just going to be like a loadout update or something like that, nothing crazy, but we are going to have to wait and see. But I really like this idea. This is a really fun one, very creative. Really like it. This next one is by Cole Johnson, and they ask, do you think this would be a good buff for Mozzie? Basically, you can ping a spot on the map, and whenever you catch a drone, it will auto-drive to that spot. Kind of more of a quality buff, but I don't think it would ruin him. I'm not really going to have a long answer for this one. I think it's a fun idea. I can see the thought process, and I don't dislike it, but I just feel like that'd be a lot of dev time for a pretty insignificant buff for the most part. And I also just kind of don't like the idea of adding like automated stuff in the game. Like, I feel like a Mozzie should have to drone himself. He should have to put stuff into positions. I just think at the core of Siege, a lot of player input should be there compared to the stuff being automated. This next one is by Dr. Bees over on Discord, and they have a concept of ban fatigue. This is a system where if you individually vote to ban an operator for 2 matches in a row, and that ban goes through, you cannot vote to ban them on the 3rd game. This is to keep players from always banning the same ops whilst minimizing the effect on your teammates. Now, I think this is a fun idea, and there's a lot of logic to it, but I think this applies better to Siege's old ban system, not the system we just got with the release of Siege X. I think the system which came out of Siege X is significantly better, where you ban an operator after every single round, and I don't think a ban fatigue should exist with that current system, because the bans are now more targeted and tailored to the enemies you're currently playing against. So if you've identified that Ram is a problematic enemy in 3 matches in a row against completely different players, I don't think it's fair that you shouldn't be able to ban her against one of those players just because 2 other separate players were utilizing her well. In the old system, I definitely think that made sense because people would just comfort ban the same ops every single time. But in the current ban system, I think there's a lot of freedom and breathing room for banning different ops that you don't need a ban fatigue system. But yeah, back in the old system where everyone would just ban Jackal every game, even though he wasn't even as problematic as other operators, I think ban fatigue would have worked. But now that there's a lot more freedom with it, and I think the ban system's just significantly better across the board, I don't think we need it. This next one is by Dino Knight over on the Discord, and they ask, should there be more attachments for guns, like new lasers that have different buffs, different magazine types like drum mags or fast mags? My simple answer to this is yes. I think that a lot of that stuff is severely underutilized. They would just have to balance all stuff so it has a pro and a con. Like, if I have fast mags on my gun, for example, what is the downside going to then be? Is it going to be less bullets per magazine? Is it going to be slower ADS time? I don't know. It doesn't even have to be logical. The issue when you just do all this stuff is that there has to be a pro and con for everything. So 100% yes, I would love to see more attachments come to the game. I would just like to see effort put into them if they do that, so stuff is balanced, so stuff is done correctly, and there is actually like a pro and con for each item, because I don't want them to add some stuff and then just immediately it's like, well, you can run this and this is by far the best for every single gun in the game, and then it just sort of nullifies every single other attachment. Like you mentioned the drum mag. Well, a drum mag is a bigger magazine. What would the downside there be for a lot of weapons? Would it be a slower reload time? Typically, drum mags don't have a crazy slow reload time, so again, you're going to have a lot of stuff questioned there. You also may have clipping issues with character models as well. If an operator has a gun which now has a drum mag on it, and it's a weapon that typically doesn't have a drum mag, it could clip into the operator itself, so you'd have a lot of visual issues as well. So I'm open to the idea, it just has to be done correctly. This next one is by Shiny Kuma, and they ask, what ranked map do you think should or would be most likely to be removed next? Now, I don't like the idea of removing maps from the pool. I've gotten to the stage in this game that I'd honestly be down for every map to be in the ranked pool. Like even Yacht and Tower, I just think it'd be funny. And like, I feel like there could actually be some skill come out from teams who genuinely want to win the match. But realistically speaking, that wouldn't happen. And you're right to say that maybe one would be removed. So I'd like to think that they would be remastered and then just completely updated into ranked without being removed first. but I think the most likely options are either Villa, Outback, and maybe Theme Park, not necessarily in that order. I think Theme Park's the best out of those three. I think Theme Park is a severely overhated map. I think Theme Park's fine. I think it's a great map. Villa, I'm getting tired of. I just think it hasn't aged very well. Like, the upstairs is just a corridor and 2 bomb sites. They kind of play the exact same. There's not much unique playstyle for Villa. I would love to see the basement get reworked on that map and just, like, change it completely, add a new bomb site, and bring some new life to that map. And Outback is probably one of people's least favorite maps in the pool. Even after it got reworked, people just didn't really care for it that much. It's not my favorite map either. It doesn't bother me as much as it bothers other people, but I think that's probably the most likely out of all the maps in the pool is Outback. Unless they give it another remaster, I don't think a lot of people's opinions are going to change on it. Again, it doesn't bother me, but it's definitely one of the least liked maps in the pool. So that is going to do it for this episode of the Siege Mailbox. Be sure to drop a like on this video if you did enjoy. Post your questions in the comment section below for the next video. Subscribe if you haven't already, and have an incredible rest of your day. I love you all. Stay safe. Have a good one.